In times when Mr. Harvey was too ill or otherwise unable to record the rest of the story, he turned the task over to the show's creator and sole writer, his son. This is one of those times. Here's Paul Harvey Arant Jr.
Now, the rest of the story. Grandpa Doolittle and Grandma would carry with them all their days a particular smiling memory. You see, many years ago, they lived in Custer, a small town in Washington State near the Canadian border, lived there with their 4 children. Grandma was a sweet, shy woman, so shy, in fact, that should a stranger speak to her, she'd just turn away. She was also talented, at least that's what Doolittle thought. Many evenings he'd stood by the children's bedroom door, eavesdropping as Mommy sang her youngsters to sleep. Such a voice, Doolittle believed, was too rare to be buried beneath heaps of laundry and stacks of dirty dishes. Now, there was a little band in Custer. It was organized by 2 brothers named John and Marshall Penn. They played at the Delta Grange Hall on Saturday nights, even had a local radio show of their own. But when Doolittle explained to his wife that he'd arranged a singing audition for her with the Penn brothers, he was answered with tears of protest. How could Doolittle even suggest such a thing? She wasn't a singer, she was a housewife, a mother of 4, and those youngsters were the only audience she'd ever faced or ever hoped to face. Well, it was too late now, Doolittle said. The audition was set for Wednesday afternoon, and one way or another, his bashful bride was going to be there. The days passed in anguish, and Wednesday came. Literally dragging his wife by the arm, Doolittle strode proudly to the Penn brothers' home at the appointed hour. The 2 musicians weren't particularly looking forward to this either. They'd already tried to convince Doolittle that his biased opinion was not extraordinary, that every devoted husband whose wife can carry a tune thinks she should be singing at the Metropolitan Opera. But the Penn brothers' reticence in the matter was nothing compared to that of Doolittle's wife. Trembling and unable to speak, she stood in the parlor, clinging to her beaming husband. "What are you going to sing for us today?" asked Marshall. The woman's knees buckled. She opened her mouth, but the words were trapped in her throat. Then Doolittle announced that his wife knew only one song all the way through, a number popular at the time called "There He Goes." What key did she sing it in? Well, Doolittle's wife didn't know anything about keys. She just sang, and she did. And from that day on, no one ever again questioned the musical judgment of Doolittle, nor the natural golden talent of his reluctant bride. You see, the pleasantly surprised Penn brothers invited her to sing at the Grange Hall that Saturday night, and a tape recording of the event was subsequently played on the radio. And a star was born. So, those were the times Grandpa Doolittle and Grandma liked best to recall. But fully to appreciate their memories, there's something more you should know. That Grandma married Doolittle at the age of 13, and was a mother of 4 at 18, and became a grandmother at 29. Because the sweet, shy housewife who before 1960 had sung only for her children at bedtime had by October 1972 won every country music award possible to win. Loretta Lynn. Only now, you know the rest of the story.
And now the rest of the story. Loretta Lynn was born Loretta Webb in this house in Butcher Holler, Kentucky, just as she described in Coal Miner's Daughter. Well, sort of. There really was no such place as Butcher Holler. In an interview in 2003, Loretta said, "The whole thing is really Webb Holler. The Webbs owned the holler, and the Webbs started marrying into the Butchers. I thought the syllable came out better saying Butcher than saying Webb, so I made it Butcher Holler. They say Butcher since that song." Until Loretta's song, the holler, be it Butcher or Webb Holler, did not appear on any maps. Loretta's childhood home near Van Leer, Kentucky had no electricity, no plumbing. Loretta remembered that in the winter, the water that her father, Ted Webb, drew from the web at night would be frozen solid by morning. Snow seeped through the cracks in the walls of the house. The rest of her difficult childhood was summed up in Coal Miner's Daughter. Before she released the song in 1970, no one was interested in the old cabin. But following its release and rise to the top of the charts, visitors flocked to this tangible piece of country music history. Rather than marrying at 13 years of age, as Paul Jr. said in the broadcast, Loretta met Oliver Vanetta Lynn Jr. at a pie supper when she was 13 and he was 21. Many people knew him as Doolittle, but Loretta called him Do, short for Doolittle. Do had already served a stint in the Army and had a reputation as being wild. On January 10, 1948, 15-year-old Loretta married 22-year-old Do. Like her father, Do got a job working in the local coal mine. Later that same year, when Loretta was 4 months pregnant with their first child, Do left Loretta for another woman. But before the child was born, Do and Loretta patched up their troubled marriage and moved to Custer, Washington. Loretta's life wasn't much easier in Custer. Loretta said, "In Washington, I was picking strawberries, raspberries, blueberries to take care of my kids. Do worked on a farm and then a place where he worked on cars, but he didn't make much money. The two bachelors that lived a mile and a half from me and the kids would walk there, clean house, and do the clothes." Although they had little extra money, Do saved up and bought Loretta a Sears and Roebuck guitar as a gift and encouraged her to play and sing. Loretta always credited Do as being responsible for her career in music. When she first began to perform, following the audition that Paul Jr. told us about in the broadcast, Loretta sounded too much like her idol to be called an original. That idol was Patsy Cline. Her original but blunt writing style mixed with the conviction in her voice eventually set her apart. In 1959, Loretta appeared on Buck Owens' television show in Tacoma, Washington. Her performance on the show led to a contract with Norm Burley's Zero Records. She recorded a single for Zero Records called "I'm a Honky Tonk Girl." The song peaked at number 14. Loretta, Do, and their 4 children drove across country, stopping at radio stations along the way to push the single. In 1960, Loretta made a guest appearance on the Grand Ole Opry. Audience reaction to Loretta's Opry performance was immediately positive, and this led to more appearances on the Opry. Other regular female Opry cast members, however, were upset by her increased popularity and increased appearances on the Opry. Several of them planned a meeting to discuss ways to keep Loretta off the Opry. One of those who was invited to the meeting was Loretta's idol, Patsy Cline. But unbeknownst to the other female Opry performers, Loretta and Patsy Cline had become great friends by this time. When the women gathered for the meeting, Patsy Cline walked into the room, followed by Loretta Lynn. That ended their plot to keep Loretta off the Opry. In 1963, Loretta became a full-fledged member of the Grand Ole Opry. Loretta developed her own style of songwriting and her stage persona, most of which was just Loretta being Loretta. Although she recorded a number of hit records, the one that she's most associated with is, of course, Coal Miner's Daughter. In 1976, Loretta released her autobiography entitled Coal Miner's Daughter, which was listed among the New York Times bestseller books. I'll include a link to the description if you want to get a copy of this book. In 1980, the book was made into an Oscar-winning movie starring Sissy Spacek as Loretta and Tommy Lee Jones as Do. Sissy Spacek won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her portrayal as Loretta. But that's just one of her songs. Loretta wrote more than 160 songs and released 60 albums. She had 10 #1 albums and 16 #1 singles, some of which include the feisty hits Fist City, Don't Come Home A-Drinkin' with Lovin' on Your Mind, One's on the Way, You Ain't Woman Enough, and so many more. Which is your favorite Loretta Lynn song? Let me know in the comments. I'm Brad Dyson. Thanks for watching. And as Paul Harvey would say, good day.